Alright, so I've taken quite a bit of aspirin over the last 24 hours to get my hand to stop throbbing. I'm back in my brace. It was kind of a pain getting it on and off yesterday to get the x-rays. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to clean these ports out with this scratch pad that's for body work. It's a ultra fine. I'm going to clean those out, and hopefully, because they had a bunch of that aluminum oxide corrosion going on, so maybe once I get them cleaned I'll get lucky and I'll get them lubed up really good and get those damn things to slide in today. So that's going to be what I need to do, so we'll see how this goes. Alright, so I've used my finger, basically just forcing that in there with my thumb until it was down as far as I could get it, and just working it back and forth, so they feel a lot smoother now. Alright, so now we're going to lube them up and see how it goes. Okay, so I had to lay the intake down flat, and then I used basically the palm of both hands, and they popped right in. So that did help quite a bit. So the keepers are on where they're supposed to be. Everything's in, so now I'm going to go ahead and put the hardware back in here to support that, and then all right, that's what we're gonna do. All right, so got the hardware that supports the fuel rail back in place. So, and this one vacuum line that was connected here is reconnected to the fuel pressure regulator switch, whatever you want to call it. I am looking at upgrading this one. It looks like there's a couple of different versions. There's one, I think it's like 35 pounds. I think these are 30. So I think I'm going to upgrade that at some point, because I think maybe with the 4-port injectors it might help. We'll see. Right now I'm just going to run it in the stock configuration, but the new injectors are in. They're all set. Everything is seated, so that's nice. I did destroy 2 O-rings trying to get the uppers in yesterday, but again, I had extras, so not that big a deal. But if you're not, don't get them in straight, you do have a tendency to cut them. All right, so I did use, again, I used this liquid silicone spray. It works really good about getting rubber and silicone rings in. So that should be that. I'm trying to think, oh yeah, I need to still switch over the throttle body, so I'm going to go ahead and get that taken apart, and I'll set this over here for now, and we'll get that one taken apart and clean it up a little bit before we install it. Alright, so these bolts are either a 10, or if you've got a Torx, they are a T30. Alright, so I got the throttle body off, and I just stuck my finger in that. Don't know how good that shows up, but that's like a mixture of water and oil. Now, there's not a lot of it, but you can see, yeah, kind of milkshakey like. So I don't see any up here at the intake side. So I'm hoping that maybe that was just because I've had the air box off and it's been opened and it's kind of just hanging out there. Or maybe from me spraying this cleaner in there, maybe I got it kind of stirred up. So hopefully that's not too bad. Oops. So next I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit before I put it on. This gasket is broke. It was broke when I took it apart. So I'm going to use my new gasket, and they're cheap, so I'll just order another one when I get ready to do the other throttle body. But yeah, and even on this one, it's funny because this gasket here is huge. You can see it's much bigger than that space, but I think it's even bigger than the one that I have there. So maybe the new gasket, I don't know. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's kind of weird. All right, but let's get this cleaned up and then we'll get it remounted. All right, change of plans. That's my new throttle body. This is the old one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these two guys off and replace these. And the reason for that is if you look at that, it's got 3 round type pins. And if you look at this one, oh, I can't pick it up. It's got 3 flat pins that are different. So if I had the wiring harness, I could just change the harness, but I'm just going to unbolt those and replace them with these. So I'm going to clean these up because this was working. So we're going to go ahead and do that. But I also noticed that the TJ version of those ports are exactly like the new. So this was for a 4.0, and so those are different. But so we're going to switch these. That it would be the only reason why I would switch them. But I figure the throttle body isn't going to make that much difference as to what it does, because we're only making it a little bit bigger as far as the air intake. And this steps down right in here anyway. This one's does it too, but not as much. So I don't know what the difference size was. They're pretty much the same, so my stock air box should work on there pretty well. So yeah, instead of cleaning this one up, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the 2 ports or sensors, whatever you want to call these, and swap them over, and that way we can do that. Now we won't be using this, so I will be taking it off, and there is a vacuum down there. I'll be plugging that because on this version we don't have that vacuum there. This is actually relocated someplace else, so we're not going to use that anyway. So basically what we have is just those 2 little teeth that plug into the end of that keyway. It's going to be just like that inside of there. The difference here is these were star bits, and I think it was size 20, and these are Phillips head. We're going to reuse the Phillips head, but other than that, these things are exactly the same, pretty much the same size. We just need to make sure that we get that in the right position. That is what opens and closes the sensor that's inside there when you step on the throttle pedal. Okay, so when you put that on the new, or replace it if you're going to do this, that little keyway turns in that direction. So with this facing up, it's going to only turn in one direction. So if you see if I can do this, so I put the screwdriver in here, see, it will only turn in this direction. It has to match the direction of the pull of the throttle cable. So if you put that little bar, let's say you put the bar on this side, you want it on, you don't want it, you want it on this side of the top. That way when you pull that throttle cable, that moves. If not, this won't move. So you'll be able to check it by just pulling your throttle and verifying that it all works. I was going to use this new hardware, but taking off the one screw, I bungered it up. And I just figured, well, I'll just go ahead and reuse those. So I still need to do the other one, and I still need to get this off so I can get the vacuum plug. Okay, so this other thing, you're going to want to change this entire housing. This piece here is much bigger than that one. So if you look, that hole down inside there is huge compared to the hole there. So we need to switch that housing over, but I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna clean that up. Now on this particular housing, it has security Torx bits, and the one I have here is not a security, so I have to go inside and find my security bits. And this one just has regular screws, so I don't know why. Even the older style there had, because I was going to swap that one instead, but even that one has the security Torx bits. So I'm going to go grab my security bits that I have, and we'll swap the two housings. We'll get the two parts cleaned up before we put it back together. But yeah, basically this is just a vacuum valve, so it allows more air to bypass just depending on where the throttle is. But this one, you can see, is a little crusty, so we'll get it cleaned up so it looks nice, and then if we have to change it down the road with a new one, we will. But all right, let me go find my bits. All right, so I got my security bits out, and that ended up being a T15, and this is the gasket that came off the old one. It is exactly the same size, so this housing will fit, and this one even says 2.5 on it, so there you go. So I'm going to clean that up real good, get all the crud out of that the best I can. You can see it's kind of dirty, so we'll get that cleaned up a bit. We'll clean up this guy as well, and then we will reassemble it on our new one with the brand new gasket that it had with it. If I can pick it up. Yeah, I can't pick it up. All right, so let me get some cleaning done. Okay, so we've got that on with the new gasket. We reused the screws and not the Torx bits. I've got this cleaned. I've got that as clean as I'm going to be able to get it without getting crazy. So we're going to go ahead and put that back in. And the Phillips screws from this housing do not fit into this housing, so we will have to use the Torx bit screws that came out of it, but that's okay. All right, so let me get those put back together, and then we can get this off, and then I can find a vacuum cap. Well, as I was putting the screws back into the old housing, I happened to notice, and it's probably going to be really hard to tell, but the security bits have holes in them. Apparently one of the security plugs, see if I can see it right there, is stuck inside of the Torx bit. I do know people usually just snap those off with like a screwdriver and just use a regular one, but now I need to get a new Torx bit in case I need that, so that's a bummer. But okay, so we've got this off. All this is a vacuum. I'm not sure what vacuum it is, but it's on the newer TJ style. But like I said, we don't need it, so we can go ahead and plug it. Other than that, the throttle bodies are identical. So I'm going to put the new gasket on, and we're going to mount this up to the manifold. That way this part's done, and then once it cools off here in a little while, I'll get back out here and clean the head off so we can start putting the new gasket and our new parts back on. Okay, so all bolted back on, back in the factory spot, and I'm almost wondering if this vacuum is not the same as that vacuum, but we're going to go ahead and cap that one off. I was almost contemplating using just the rubber hose and a plug, but I'm just going to put a regular plug on there. I don't know if I have any that small, but that'll be easy to get to later. So our intake manifold is completely reassembled. We have our one vacuum line that goes from here to our fuel rail pump. We have our other line here that goes to the valve cover, our brake, and then whatever these two were. I think one is a vacuum canister or something up there. I didn't chase these back to find out, I just unplugged them. But everything else is in nice and tight. So the only thing we have left to do would be to put this back in, and should be good to go. So other than that, it's gotten a little warm, so we're going to take a little break again and come out and clean the head off once we get to that. I should go ahead and soak it. Oh. I think I'll get some plastic bags and stuff up in there, and then I will soak that up pretty good so that it comes clean easier. So let me do that too. Alright, so what I used was those single-use grocery bags that you get. Full size, stuffed one in each hole. They're in there pretty good. So, one, they're white so you can't miss them. Two, they're stuffed in there tight so no water or spray. And I'm going to be using degreaser, or the dollar store Awesome is actually what I'm using. And I'm just going to spray the head down. I'll probably spray everything down. Let it soak for a while, and then I'll come back out here and see about wiping it off with a rag and see how that works. And if I have to, then I can go back in and either scrape it or hit it with a brass brush so I don't scratch anything. Alright, so back in a little while. Alright, sprayed it down some, and now we're going to let it soak. Alright, so it's been a little while, sun's moved, still a little warm, but I'm going to spray that down and try to rub some of that off there, and if not, we'll hit it with the scraper. That's looking a lot better. I got those first three cleaned up pretty good. You can see right there where I stopped on the fourth, there's like a line halfway. So, again, I got to get my stool out so I'm tall enough to reach. With the 4-inch lift on this thing, I just don't have the arm length to get over everything, so I'm gonna have to crawl up there and get the rest of that cleaned up. But it's coming out pretty good, so that's a plus. Alright, so that looks pretty good. It's all clean. I've wiped it down. I've taken the scraper across it just to make sure that there's nothing left on there. It's pretty clean. So I'm waiting for the stud to come in. It's coming in tomorrow. So I'm just going to let that dry. I did take the wire brush to the block a little bit because it was kind of grungy. I'm not trying to get that too clean. Just because. So hopefully that stud will come in early, and then we can start putting the exhaust and intake back together, and hopefully get this buttoned up tomorrow, which will be minutes, seconds for you, because I'm not going to post a short video. Alright, back when we have the studs. Alright, so I got that all cleaned up. You can see it's kind of nice and shiny. Finished scrubbing that down yesterday. So today, while I'm waiting for some bolts to come in so I can start putting that back together, I have a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and replace the clutch master. I have a new one because I talked to my neighbor yesterday, and he said he is going to come over Saturday morning, which is tomorrow for me, and do the clutch for me. So one of the things I need to do is disconnect the arm right there. I don't know if you can see it, buried back in here about where my hand is. Of course, that's a bar and wiring. But so yeah, I'm gonna knock that out real quick. It's just 2 bolts, a clip, and the line, which is going to be replaced. So we're going to put that braided line in. So let me get that out of there. It looks to be like some 1/2-inch bolts maybe. It's hard to tell. So, all right, let me get those. Well, that was easy to get the arm off of the clutch pedal. It's just one of these keepers. I thought it was one of those funky ones that you have to pry up on, but nope, it just pulled straight out. So now we just need to get the 2 bolts out. All right, to get the top one out, I unhooked this wiring loom out of its holder, and with a ratchety end, it's a little easier to get to. There's not a whole lot of room, so you're either going to have to use a box end wrench. The ratchety one does help quite a bit, so it's almost off. And then from the bottom one, I can just use a regular socket and ratchet. And again, the longer extension will save you from being too close to the brake booster and everything else. You'll have plenty of room to work with. Again, I think that's a 12-inch if I remember. So we'll get that out real quick, and then I'll get the new one and the new line, because it looks like it's a little easier to put the line in when you put the master in. So I'll go ahead and get that out too. Now, if you're not going to replace the line like I am, there is a pin here that needs to come out to take out that fitting. Also, it might be hard to see here, but right there where my finger is, that line is bolted to the firewall, so it looks to be either a 7/8 or a 10. So I'm going to crawl down there with a 10 and see if I can get that out of there. Alright, I was wrong. It actually was 5/16. And so now it's ready to come on out. I should be able to just pull it on up out of there. We will see. A little twisting, a little turning, a little hanging up on that wire. I'm going to need my other hand, I think. Maybe. Yep, I'm going to need both hands. But it should come out. Just don't get it tangled in the wire like I did. Okay, once I got that bolt out, it just was a little bit of twisting and turning, and it came out in one piece. If you're really gentle, you probably won't break it and crack it. So now the next thing I'm going to do is go get my new one and get all of the stuff so that I can get it ready to put in. Alright, so here is our new clutch master. Here is a bag with a new keeper and an O-ring. And here is our braided line. Now, this braided line kit did not come with any instructions, so this is kind of my guessing here. This brass colored fitting looks like it should go in place of where the line goes here on that, and that pin is going to go probably through that groove, and then the 90-degree angle here on the line is what screws into that fitting, the brass fitting, and then these other two fittings are what goes down on the transmission into the line. That's my guess. So that's how I'm going to put it together. So first thing I need to do is get a little rubber cap out of there. I guess we drop the O-ring down inside of there, and then we'll have the keeper. So let me open this bag up. Alright, so this little brass piece fits in there, and it goes all the way. Kind of hard to see, but there's the groove. You can see that the groove is right in the spot where it needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and get that O-ring in there, and we'll get that pin in there. Alright, so you want to get this pin started. There's a very tiny taper on one side, so you can kind of get it in there. And what I did is I got it so that it was just outside of the where it's going to engage. You can see the O-ring down there in the bottom. Now I should be able to push this brass thing in far enough where it clears, and I should be able to drive that home. Alright, with a few good whacks, I got it in. It's flush on both sides. Now we can hook up the line and drop it over the side. Alright, so that's what I did. So I make sure that I drop this down the engine side, not the fender side. That way it should clear everything. And I'm going ahead and we're going to tighten this up, and then we'll reinstall it. Alright, so I got the bottom one in. I'm having a hell of a time with the upper one because not having my good hand, it is hard to get in there and turn that. But something you should be aware of is on this guy, there's this little foot, so it wants to be facing down. If you have it facing up, this won't push back far enough to put that keeper in, so just be aware of that. Alright, so I'm gonna fight with this for another hour, I think, and see if I can get it on there. Okay, so I got the top one back on. I used the ratchet. I got it on maybe like a half a turn or a turn so that it wouldn't fall off. Used the ratchety end of my box wrench and was able to get it on and tight. So those are all tight. Routing for that on the prior one went underneath, but it seems to rub more. So I went over. I'm going to right here. This is a sharp edge. Right here underneath the brake bracket. So I'm gonna probably put a piece of rubber hose on there, or maybe zip tie that back to something so that it just doesn't rub. But the rest of it's down there on the bottom. I don't know what fittings. I'm gonna have to look inside the clutch box and see how that all transfers over to the new stuff. But yeah, that's fairly straightforward. Again, we're still just waiting for the bolts to come so I can start putting things back together. So I'll be back when the bolt gets in. Alright, so this is the new Slave. The clutch line kit came with two fittings. It looks like we're going to use this one, and we're going to replace this piece and thread that onto that. So I just need to grab a couple wrenches so we can get that off there. I guess I'll put that in the box so I don't lose them. Okay, to take them off, it was a 9/16 on that end and a 7/16 on the small end. And so the new fitting is 11/16. So 7/16, 11/16, and 9/16 if you're taking the old one off. Alright, so that is ready for install tomorrow. So yeah, that's where we're at. Alright, cool. Again, back once the bolts show up.